Good evening. Welcome to the stream. 2 days in a row, I'm on fire. And I also did an FX results video for Q1 earlier, which was something, I'm supposed to do every month, but normally every quarter is about the extent of it. Okay, so obviously we've had heaps of alerts come through today again. Followed basically what I said yesterday, I think, that I was overall bearish still at the higher time frames on US dollar tether, and I've got the indices up here, but crypto, from a crypto perspective, obviously we're still bearish, and similarly with the indices, I was still bearish, and the higher time frames on US dollar dominance and on the crypto market cap charts, etc., were still bearish. And obviously we can get retracements in that, and it's kind of hard to know when it's reversing, but until I see supply break. I just wanted to show on this, so I don't want to be, again, I want to be quick on the general crypto stuff because I wanted to look at the alts, because that was the purpose. Yeah, just a few things just of note for people who follow me because it was interesting. I think at the point of the stream yesterday, we probably would have been in this first hit. So I'll show you this first hit to the high. So for example, on S&P, we had this first hit here. And I can't remember what I said on the stream versus what I said just in the chat in the group. But I was saying, so I had NASDAQ and SP50. Is this the, why have I got NASDAQ and SP50? No, I've just opened NASDAQ. Anyway, and NASDAQ and SP50 had hit the alerts already, and they'd already started to drop off from there. And I said I was slightly concerned also, and US dollar at that point also was at support. That was very wrong, really. Yeah, so but I said I wasn't overly happy that the Dow and the Russell hadn't hit the zones. I thought they could go a bit higher. So it was nice. It was just such a perfect confluence, I guess, that when Trump spoke, we had this wick up, which took NASDAQ and S&P higher into the zones. I mean, obviously still very much holding the higher time frame zone. Which then allowed Russell to hit also the, I think it was daily inside weekly supply, and I was in a bit in two minds because Russell was already in the weekly, and in fact also has a 3-month zone there. I thought the 3-month was a bit higher, so maybe I haven't got that drawn quite right. I don't know, that is, yeah, so it also hit the 3-month zone, but I wanted Russell to add higher at this daily, and then also particularly Dow. Although interestingly, Dow actually hasn't come off as strong as some of the others have. But Dow also, I wanted to hit this monthly level, and again, just before the news, it just dropped off here, and then the wick took it right back into the monthly level before the big drop. So yeah, that was really nice confluence for Bitcoin. Then similarly on Bitcoin, again per the stream yesterday, I was saying that I wanted I wanted Bitcoin firstly up in this daily supply, so that's where the cross was, and it did hit there again just before Trump spoke, and then it wicked up and it didn't take out the high. It came very close, but it did take it out on CME before again the bigger drop. We're just getting a text message. What I wanted at the same time was for US dollar dominance to hit this daily demand, and at that point it really didn't look like that was going to happen. You know, it was just kind of hovering in here, and I was a bit like, well, okay, maybe it's going to find support on these wicks. It was a bit above that actually, depends on which time frame you look at, but maybe it's going to find some support midway, although I still would prefer it down there. So it's kind of interesting that we eventually got, again, really solid confluence across everything for the bigger up move. Then subsequently we've had a new daily supply was created on Ether, like Bitcoin still remained in range and unexciting structurally from a high time frame perspective. US dollar dominance made this new daily demand, and it tapped down inside it. Again, I just went to bed last night, so I didn't add any entries or anything like that. Yeah, so now we have been left with a CME gap on Bitcoin and Ether above. We've still got this one below, so again the reliability of the gaps has decreased lately. I mean, obviously they probably eventually fill, but you know, if it's a runaway gap like this, if it's really breaking down, then it's possible it doesn't fill. However, if we do go back up there, that's obviously a decent area to potentially look for a short. But I really want to see what's happened off these lows first. So again, CME took out the high and has actually taken out the low. The normal Bitcoin pair has also taken out the Monday's low, but has left behind this low here from, when's that, 18th of March. But it's taken out Monday's low there. It's made a new 8-hour supply above, and then a new 8-hour above that with that CME gap inside. And it's still holding this giant triangle. So I'm kind of, you know, getting a little bit more nervous about this entry here. This is a low time frame entry. You know, I was kind of looking up here, and, you know, up here we did have, you know, an extended consolidation, but it does become hard to know when this is going to happen. You know, so lower time frame, yes, we might get a bounce there, but the higher time frame is rejection of monthly supply here, new 5-day supply, rejection of 5-day supply, retest of the daily coming off the 5-day, and it's still in a range, you know, falling underneath this 5-day, and it's a weak 5-day because of the wick below. But still, I can't be high time frame bullish on this. Like, it's one thing to trade like little up moves like you had yesterday, but really I'm high time frame bearish still. Although to clarify that, not the highest time frames are obviously still bullish, but further from a trading and local mid time frame, let's say, perspective, obviously the trend is still down since the high, and it's moved into a bit of a sideways, but generally we expect sideways to resolve in downward, particularly if it's continually making and rejecting supply. If it starts to break supply, then I can reconsider. But yeah, like I say, so there's not much new, there's nothing new I want to say on that, because I haven't added any entries, and because I'm still, yeah, so that lower, so I'll show you on the lower time frame chart, this lower entry, it's just a bit down. There are walls at 80k, so I looked at that. There's also walls, so Coinbase, I think I mentioned yesterday, Coinbase has stacked walls all the way down to 70k. There is a double wall at 76k for some reason. I'm not sure how big it was, I didn't really look at the sizes. But yeah, 76 to 70 particularly have very big walls, also multiple walls as opposed to very big. 76 obviously taking out that previous low, so that's not overly surprising. But then our preference, as I've said, is 72 and below, and with other confluence possibly at 69, 68 level. So yeah, that's that on Bitcoin. ETFs have become challenging, so I was looking again just to see what data we had yesterday. So both my amalgamated data sources have, you know, buying going on yesterday. So 218 net on this source, that's 218 million US dollars, and then 2.8 K Bitcoin for this source. My concern is, again, I just don't know the validity of this data, because then I look back at the ARPA data, which is transfers to and from these funds, and that really wasn't showing up yesterday. And then, for example, I was then thinking, okay, well, this source is more reliable because it has more on it than this. So, for example, like here we have this column for Invesco, the last 4 days are blank on under Invesco from this source, whereas this source has data buys and sells for Invesco for the last 4 days. But then when I look at the ARPA data, and I did a specific Invesco table so I could see, from yesterday, for example, it's only got one transfer to and from Invesco. So presumably moving between Invesco wallets, presuming this source is to be believed. So if that's the case, then it's possible that while I thought this was better because it had more data, it's possible it's also counting too much data if it's counting internal transfers. So yeah, it's kind of hard to know like what's reliable and what's not. But I suppose just generically across the board, we can at least see there was buying coming in yesterday, which is interesting. But obviously it needs to be sustained because so far it hasn't been. Today, so this is the only source, the ARPA is the only source that has today's data. And there's been a lot going on today. There's like not normally do we have 2 to 3. Oh, reloaded. We don't normally have 2 to 3 pages of data. So later this afternoon we've had well, there's some what appears to be some buying from ARK, but then it's also transferring a lot around, so it's kind of somewhat hard to judge. And yeah, they're the sort of bigger ones on this page. Bitwise have a couple of buys in there. I'm not sure if ARC's just mostly transferring around. Fidelity's got some buying going on. And then BlackRock had some selling at the start of New York. And then, yeah, a couple more from Bitwise earlier today. So it's looking like it might be positive today. But again, I need to, you know, validate that data when I get the end of the day data with my two sources, which may or may not be reliable either. So anyway, moving on. Yeah, so on the, I just want to have a quick look at the others chart. So this is obviously, I was bearish on this because, so I was bearish on this and on Ether because of the weekly supply. So obviously we've it only closed just below by a hair on this, but has rejected off it and is trying to move lower, potentially breaking this very long-term trend line, which is more concerning. Others dominance was also the other one that I really didn't like, and again made weekly supply and has just tapped off it, rejected to go lower. Total DeFi I think didn't make the weekly supply, but I know did make the weekly supply and has also gone up into it and come off fairly hard. So overall things not looking that great, but remaining with the same challenge that we are still in demand on the higher time frame. So, but yeah, the mid time frame, so the higher time frame monthlies are still okay, but the weeklies are still starting to look significantly more ropey, and those weeklies could potentially push it through these monthly demands as we've seen on Ether. So Ether, again, like I say, more bearish. Ether did make so it made the weekly supply that rejects. So as for yesterday, actually, just while I update. So when I was looking at Ether yesterday, I was saying also that, you know, maybe we would get a rejection in here at the same time that Bitcoin hit the daily supply because of that confluence. Obviously, then the tariffs wicked it up, but didn't quite hit my next level of interest. So it's just kind of rejected off. I guess, yeah, it's found resistance at the top of this previous consolidation, and then closed below overnight. So then did create a new daily supply, and today has come and taken out the low. So again, yeah, could end up swing failing, could hold here, but it's a bit early to tell. Or yeah, we need to see more price action and more buying coming in to actually prove that this could be a swing failure. Other than that, as I've said, so I wanted lower on Ether. The only thing, just to add to what I've said previously, is that, yeah, I've got this alert for this 3-week, not sure what's happened, that should not be there, that should be, oh no, that is correct, sorry. Oh no, my computer's going to go crazy. Hold on, let me see. No, we're okay. Apart from the cough. So yeah, I had this alert for this, obviously this 3-week demand. Down here the alert went earlier, but obviously it hasn't quite hit the zone yet. Just be aware, so I noticed the CME 3-week level is at 1688, so it's a little bit inside the zone. And then again, as I've said previously, that in fact the daily at the bottom is something I would kind of prefer. So in contrast with Bitcoin, sort of showed back on this chart, on the lower time frame chart. So obviously if Ether wants to hold the top of that 3-week, or, you know, even if it goes down to that 1690 area that CME has the 3-week at, then Bitcoin's going to have to hold broadly the 80k level. If Bitcoin can't hold the 80k level, then obviously Ether is almost certainly going to go deeper in the zone. So hold on, let me just check. My chat is saying I don't currently have a live stream, which clearly I do. So yeah, let me just check. So I just check nobody's talking to me without me realizing it, but it might be because my account hasn't. No, they are connected. No, I'm having some problems with my amalgamated chat bot recently, so I'll fix that later. Yeah, so anyway, like I say, if Bitcoin's going to need to hold this kind of area, this down to 80k. And again, like I say, so I have the detail, you know, the Bitcoin entry obviously is on this 30-minute. It was on this 30-minute taking out these lows, but obviously now it's left like a lot more stops below, so it could wick lower. You know, there's a 15-minute untested there. There's some 15-minute or below, the pink ones, 15-minute or below, another zone untested at the bottom here. So obviously this can come down inside if it wants to, but really I want to see what happens when it hits those 80k walls. The liquidation heat map obviously is showing starting to build up some liquidations below today's price, and then you can see there's some lower, obviously under these lows, but it's not overly clear. But even under, where's that, 79,500 has some more again. Didn't look at Bybit. Didn't find Binance more accurate. Obviously there's a heaps built up above now. But yeah, do note that, you know, when we did have the top in 2021, the second top, maybe that was 2022, I can't remember now, but the second top from the previous all-time high, you know, while people are constantly looking, so everybody who trades liquidity are constantly looking for price to go back and take out highs, and they'll only trade, and there's, you know, there's obviously a very, very strong following of people who only trade swing failures. But be aware when price does start dropping, and you can see it when you look back at that 2021, 2022 price action, you'll see it at some point it just stops taking out the highs. It stops letting people who are trapped in shorts, trapped in longs at tops get out, and then just drops. So, okay, so Bybit's looking pretty much the same as Binance, like it's not very clear what level it might aim for here. And again, has those highs above, like, should it go back up again. Also of note, tomorrow NFP, so given everything's been dropping, you know, NFP could be the impetus to reverse everything. I think I tend to find that happens after a consolidation, so I don't know, but obviously we're likely to get some fuckery on the dollar. So quickly on the dollar, obviously, so I was hoping for a bounce here on this yearly zone, which we did get, but it didn't get very high. It had then made a 2-day demand, which is what hit when Trump was speaking, and it looked at that time like it was going to hold. So, you know, it came down inside it, but then it did bounce up. But the problem is it then hit this daily level, and then it was overnight that it really, really seriously dropped. And it came back into this weekly zone. There was a gap down here. There was multiple gaps, but this was the final gap to be filled, was towards the bottom of that wick. And, you know, so this is an annual demand, but it's a weak annual demand. So I talked about this in the FX video a bit earlier. So if you want to see more detail, go and have a look at that. It's at the beginning of that video. You know, it's difficult. So it is a weak demand because obviously this high has broken these highs, but hasn't broken this high. So, and you know, there is an annual demand down here that hasn't been tested. So, and I'm kind of unsure now, are we going to get a play out of this, potentially this broadening wedge, down to here, or is this annual demand going to hold? I mean, either way, I would kind of expect to get some sort of a bounce here. You know, yes, it, you know, may or may not reject somewhere in the middle here or back up here for the move down. I say I'd expect that, but it actually doesn't have to be the case at all. You know, there are situations like this where we do have just extended moves down, and with Trump, anything's possible. Yeah, so anyway, we have had that significant drop, but you know, we need to see what happens on NFP tomorrow, and that was one of the other reasons I didn't really want to update Bitcoin and Ether in a massive amount of detail now. So yeah, anyway, watch this 80k kind of area as they come into it. Possibly, you know, it can maybe wick below 79s and just generally in here in confluence with Ether hitting this 3-week level. But be conscious, you know, there is a lot of supply that it's coming off now, and these are counter trend on the long side. So, and you know, it's orange on Ether because it's a high time frame zone, but that absolutely doesn't mean it has to bounce at the top of the zone. Bearing in mind also on Ether, we are also in 3-month demand here. So that was that original arrow from up there, but it's obviously a massive zone. It could go, I think it can still go down to 1500 or something and still retain the zone, maybe even lower than that. And also a weak demand. So yeah, while we're at support, we just need to see what happens. The majors, the only one that hit, so obviously I had all those short entries in that I talked about in yesterday's stream, like on 3-month supplies and things like that. And then I had the one aggressive entry on ADA, which I was saying, well, didn't know if it was too aggressive because it was going to hit too soon, but actually it was in fact the one that played out perfectly. EOS is still holding, and so that's interesting. It might go higher given given it hasn't dropped with Bitcoin dropping, maybe this is going to go higher. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's interesting because EOS used to be my top signal, so it was kind of interesting that it hit this yesterday, and then it was a top signal, but then it wasn't the top for EOS, or may not still be. So they can obviously act independently. A lot of the alts that are pumped, are acting independently and just drop, but the majors do tend to act the same. But EOS may have to be dropped off that list now it's had the rebrand. But either way, I'm still watching for shorts on this, and watching for some supply that's shortable. I think one of my groups shorted the 4-hour supply today, but it has made an 8-hour demand in there now. So it's a weak 4-hour supply, so it's a very aggressive entry. But you can see if this kind of does get some move down. Obviously, all the others pretty much. So like I said, I'm not going to do too much detail. So BCH made a 2-day supply, has come up into there and rejected. Ripple and Litecoin both made daily supply. Litecoin did have a decent bounce. So again, they're slightly challenging on where support is. Like, I would love to have the drop lower, but I don't necessarily have to get it. There are reasons. So BCH did swing fail the low here, already stop hunted, so maybe this is just a retest of that stop hunt. Ripple is testing again this yearly level, and again stop hunted the previous bounce off the yearly level, and now is retesting the yearly level, so could bounce here. And the same with Litecoin, which has just taken out this low. And actually, because I thought this had tapped this 2-month level before, but now has tapped the 2-month level, and my alert's slightly lower. So in a perfect world, I kind of prefer the low time frame inside the high time frame. Like to get a more targeted entry, but it could run from here if it wants to. So yeah. So I still have those alerts set for the shorts that didn't get hit from previously, but yeah, just be conscious again, like these are all in daily supply, and a lot of the majors also. So then you can see Ripple's made a new 8-hour supply, so similar to Bitcoin, got a new 8-hour supply on that. We haven't on the others here actually, but I think that most of the other majors do. So the new majors, similar scenario. So BNB, or it had gone up into a daily supply and rejected, then made a new 2-day and has rejected off that today, and now has an 8-hour sitting underneath. ADA, like I say, was the solid short entry we had from yesterday, and was was a perfect example of what I said when I talked about it yesterday, that I like to have one or two more aggressive and like alerts going just in case. So I don't know if anybody got into that, because obviously it was at the time of Trump, so I probably wouldn't have recommended to trade then anyway. But again, it's made a new daily supply, hasn't managed to test it today, but now has an 8-hour just below. Similarly, Link made a daily supply but hasn't quite hit it, and now an 8-hour below. This came up into 4-hour above, or sorry, 4-day above. And Dogecoin similar, made a daily supply, has tapped off it, and now has an 8-hour. So all of these, could still potentially. So and I, I do kind of like the confluence on these. I don't think it's going to be perfect, but Link has this monthly and 5-day just a little bit lower. BNB, I would like to get a test of this 12-hour down here. This is a more bullish entry because it's obviously going for the higher low still. ADA's tough because we've already got the test on the 6-month level. We already had a huge pump off that. So I'm not sure, and then it's just a wick beyond that and a big drop if it wants to drop. So we're just looking for a higher low in an unclear area. And then Dogecoin again, like we've got the 2-month, so it came off a 5-day inside the annual, but we've got a 2-month zone inside that. And I think there's also a 6-month zone. No, actually that's a lot lower, that one, but I can't remember. There's something else lower on Dogecoin anyway. So pretty much the same applies for these, except for Atom, which is being a bit different at the moment. So DOT didn't quite create the 8-hour supply there, so obviously this had a small bounce here, didn't get to supply. Made a new daily, it's come off it, but it's sort of clinging on to the higher low. Sol was one of the weaker ones, again made a daily supply, barely bounced, didn't get anywhere close to testing, and now has a new 8-hour. Entry for longs is still down on that monthly demand, taking out the lows. So we've got a few lows over here, or particularly that low, and possibly that one, but at least taking out this 109 level potentially. And DOT, I think, yeah, I mean, if that does fall again, It might have swing failed this low, which is why I was potentially looking for longs anyway, but it's got a long way to fall on that. Near similar to DOT, it's got again big fall that it could make. So these are a bit bigger falls than the first set of new majors. Hi Aussie man. I always like to see my one regular viewer. Yeah, so near could fall down into this 3-month demand, but again has the daily supply, has the 8-hour supply that it's made below that, but again, some of these could still be on a high low if they want to be. Atom's the only one that's a little bit different, obviously, so it did kind of make a daily supply, but only by a hair, so I might delete that because it's not really a good one anyway. Then it made an 8-hour, but again, not a very good one, and now it's obviously pushing up into that. This, I did set a more aggressive alert for 3 months because it had the 3-month supply than my previous alerts up here. My concern a little bit with this, I can't remember if I said yesterday, was that this could run a bit like this. The structure is obviously quite similar to EOS. I wanted it to take out these trend line stops, and it took a few of them in the middle, but didn't. And obviously EOS has had that big pump. I would have preferred this if it had come down to like a direct demand, but again, it might be trying to pick up this 3-day indirect level there. So yeah, it does have now this 4-day supply above, and it did tap into that yesterday. So yeah, I've set the alert here, so just see what reaction we get there, but be conscious of the 3-month supply and a daily supply there, and there's also a little bit of trend line stops, but it does have this, oh, okay, that was a terrible drawing, but anyway, it does have a little bit of trend line stops here and still could go for all these stops and run up there if it wants to. But keep an eye on that because it looks like it might try and head towards that today. Yeah, so that's the majors. So like I say, nothing new on those, but obviously just following kind of what I thought previously, that the alts were bearish. Alts, on the other hand, so all the ones I went through yesterday, I'm assuming now because a lot of them were longs, and to be fair, I did say everything's pretty bearish. Yeah, I think all the ones I probably spoke about yesterday now have obviously probably blasted through zones. And then we've had a whole heap of new ones come in today. I've still said I prefer shorts. Is it wise to short euro US dollar in this area? Yes, but possibly not until tomorrow. I'll have a quick look at that for you before I get onto the alts. So yeah, so I have confluence on euro US dollar, pound US dollar, Aussie, and I think New Zealand if it swing fails. Aussie and New Zealand are a bit tenuous, I actually kind of want them to go higher now. They both have monthly demand, but neither of them have tested monthly demand. But yeah, it's looking like Aussie and New Zealand swing fading. So there's decent confluence there, and then obviously we've got the dollar at it's just above that weekly level. So yes, but you're probably too late now. So I don't know, what's your trading time frame? Do you trade low time frame, or do you trade high time frame, or would you just short this now with your stop up here somewhere, or would you want a tighter kind of entry similar to this? If you want the tighter entry, then you're too late essentially. So let me just get rid of that 3-day. But if you're looking for a swing trade off there, then yes, possibly. But you might want to wait for if we get any fuckery tomorrow on the NFP. I still find it challenging on these because so we have on the dollar, obviously we have the annual demand, and as I said, I don't know if you're watching at the start of the video, but I said we have annual demand on the dollar, and we did that mini bounce off the top of it, and now have gone much deeper inside. In contrast, obviously, we've also got annual supply on the euro, and again had a mini bounce from the bottom of it, but now has gone much deeper inside. My concern is I just don't know if these are going to break out. I don't know if the dollar's going to break down because it's got the annual demand down here that hasn't been tested. And then, from a pattern perspective, this is weak demand, it's an annual demand, so I don't want to trade against it. So yes, I would say, I am looking for shorts on the euro, but whether it's going to go and take out some stops above first, I'm not 100% sure, because this is it's a weak annual supply. It's coming in and testing this weekly. So yeah, that's certainly an area I would look for shorts, hence the alert today. So yeah, the high time frame is tricky. yes, you are right. You know, and again, you know, structurally, is this changing direction? And I can't put my drawings back on. It's going to be hard to see. You know, has this kind of done its retracement, and now we're kind of in that type of a structure, with this being a deviation of the low of the range, or down here, you know, that's the retest of it. And now we're going to head back to the top of the range. So, you know, it's difficult, but so as I say, like, we have a weekly supply. What I'm looking for, as always, is yeah, a lot of fuckery and no clear structure. Yes, I completely agree with you. But I mean, to me, I like it like that, because those are the ranges that we like to trade. You know, if we get those crazy moves like dollar yen, or gold, or, you know, then it actually for me becomes significantly harder, because I like to trade these ranges. But also, I guess it's noting that Euro and US dollar are obviously the two of the biggest currencies, and they need to be kept relatively stable, because, you know, like dollar yen has gone up 50%, more than 50%. So in the, hold on, let's look at the big run that dollar yen did. I mean, for supposedly, I mean, dollar yen itself supposedly being a stable currency, then you couple that with the strength in, is this the bottom? Yeah, so since this bottom in December 20, yeah, that went up almost 60%, which is kind of a lot for what's supposedly a stable currency. So it's not surprising it's coming back down again, but, you know, these huge moves. But for me, I much prefer the ranging price action than the trending, because these for me are very hard to trade, or they're hard for me to set the alerts on, and then I trade based on my alerts. So, you know, I think people who, they're not too bad for people who trade only one or two pairs. So, because they'll just go, okay, there's a 4-hour demand here, oh, look, it closed above, and they'll just enter immediately. For me, it's a little bit harder. But yeah, obviously this is starting to come down now. I haven't done any local, I don't know if there's a 3-day demand in here now or anything like that, so I should just check that quickly. Yeah, so it's not made a 3-day because it's only gone up today. 4-day, it's not going to close till tomorrow. Yeah, so this broke out today, so actually hasn't made any new demand in there. But yeah, obviously, so that would have been a nice entry today. Yeah, I think you're a little bit late for it now. Now you need to sort of wait, you know, go to the lower time frames, you know, where's your nearest? So there's an hourly supply there, so you can absolutely short if it tests that. But I would just be careful if it's in NFP. If you can get a short on this soon, like this evening, or in Asia, possibly in London, but that's a bit of a stretch there, you know, just put your stop above and see what happens, then yeah, that would be a trade I would take. But do be conscious, you know, that if it comes down into this demand, and that's at the time of NFP, then I think, you know, there is a possibility NFP could break it out. I mean, NFP can go either way. But yeah, I tend to try and make a guess of NFP, like just before it, by looking at the charts, the same as I did last night with the Trump stuff on the indices, to try and make a little bit of a guess as to what's going to happen. And I was quite good last night on the indices, but not so much on the dollar. So I thought the dollar would go the opposite to the indices, but it turned out, well, actually, to be fair, no, it was correct on the dollar, but it just then, for whatever reason, just massively dumped afterwards. Obviously, is now retracing. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could just do a V-shaped recovery now, because it seems to be a bit of an overreaction, this move. I don't really know why. Like, because all this today, this is all post, and it has left a gap as well. But yeah, I would wait for a retest on this, or even a swing failure of the low on the dollar and the high on euro, because it hasn't quite tapped that level. But it has left a gap here as well. Interesting, so that might go back for that, but again, doesn't have to. But yeah, with NFP, it's just good to look at where the stops are. So obviously it's left some stops here. So it could, you know, if we get a drop, it could get a pump from NFP tomorrow. But it's just a question of judging where that low is. Anyway, yeah, you're welcome. No worries about the interruption. One day I might say no, but I'm too... It's nice to have somebody on my stream who actually asks questions. So anyway, yeah, so moving on to the alts. Where are we? 7:15, so 35 minutes. I've been quite quick for Bitcoin for a change. So like I say, yeah, heaps of alerts today, so I will run through them very quickly. And to be fair, you know, so obviously I think a lot of them are actually held today, the ones that have hit, but probably the same indecision as so many. Let me just get my watch list. The same indecision as so many previously. So I think I got up to maybe API 3. I think I covered yesterday. Yeah, I did, because obviously I've drawn that picture, so I was hoping for a bounce. So, you know, obviously this is one of the ones that hit towards the end of yesterday, given it's at the bottom of the list. So I didn't sort this list, so I have them in order, so I know the new ones today. So obviously this has come deeper in that zone, but is still holding it, which is decent. But yeah, we'll see what happens on that, but at least it's held. But probably because it's later in the day, I think one of the ones earlier in the day, I imagine, will have died. So here, Epic, I'm not sure what zone that was, whether it's the 5-day I was looking for a short in, or, oh no, actually, in fact, this was the 8-hour. So this one did wick through this 8-hour, but again, is dropping off from there because the higher time frame is still 3-day, 5-day supply. Yeah, I usually wait for one local swing fail before entering. Yes, sensible. You don't always get it, like sometimes you do get that V-shaped recovery, but yeah, it's sensible to do that. Yeah, so anyway, Epic, obviously, yeah, so the short did take a wick through it, but it's dropping off now. Like there is an hourly or 2-hourly demand down here, but it's not one I would trade. So at the moment, so like I say, I have previously been putting entries in for like moves like these to the higher low, but I'm really not seeing many working out beyond this type of structure, only giving a mini higher low and then dropping down for the lower low. They're all still coming off higher time frame supply, so I'm going to be a little bit more careful now of what I assume is going to be a higher low, particularly because I still think Bitcoin has the capacity to go lower. So yeah, we'll see. So CPOOL I had a short entry on. I think I did talk about this in the stream yesterday as well, actually. That had just hit, and I said it was a 3-month supply, but I was in two minds on this. I'd had the long for, so we'd had the low, the monthly demand at the low, and then this was the test of a 2-day, which went a little bit deeper inside it. Then we got the short off there. But I'm in two minds because we've got now 3 monthly supply immediately above monthly demand. The market overall is bearish, so I would probably be more inclined now to, while I was bullish on this previously based on monthly demand, swing fail through monthly demand and a big push up, so I wanted a long retest of this zone. But now it's made 3 month supply above, it's not, I can't long this in good conscience really, even if it could bounce here and go higher inside the 3 month supply. L3 I talked about in contrast with Layer yesterday. So Layer has, that should be above, Layer has hit alert today, so I'll see what happens with that. So this alert went for 2-day demand inside this weekly. Again, it was tentative because it was more aggressive, like the ones, even it's had a decent up move, it's kind of, at the moment it's wise to wait for full retracements and see if you get a bounce off the start of the up move. But again, this is holding the zone, so I guess we'll see. JAILSTOOL. So we're in L3, actually. I think I just need to do a little bit more analysis on this as well. I haven't updated the chart, so I want to go through, because so many alerts came through that I didn't have a chance to kind of go back through and like rechart everything, or at least add in new weekly zones and things like that. So yeah, JAILSTOOL was another one that I had a short entry on. That hit late yesterday, so that was nice. Did reject, but obviously still needs some time. So again, this is that similar structure that I just described. It's made a higher low on an 8-hour demand there, or yeah, an 8-hour demand here, but retest on 5-day supply. I do have an entry there for a possible long on 12-hour demand, but again, it's a high risk entry. AIC. So yeah, this hit, I think, last night on the Trump news on this weekly demand. There is also a monthly just inside there. Let me see if it's already been tested. No, so that monthly hasn't been tested, so I might pull that alert down. So if this does drop inside a bit lower, it's still worth looking. So this is something, so there are quite a few of these that now have hit. So alerts I've set for whether 3-week or monthly, because some of them, if depending on timing, we're like front running the monthly zones. So it's obviously got an initial bounce last night, but now has come back to test. So, but you know, some of these, a lot of these that now are hitting high time frame zones, so they are worth looking for longs on, but again, just bear in mind they're huge zones, so it can go deeper inside. Do I watch Benjamin Cowen's video? I used to. I haven't for a while. I found him a bit like, while I think he's very good with data. I don't think, like firstly his videos weren't very tradable, but I find I like to hear the economics. The one I did prefer to watch, which also I haven't watched for ages either. It's called JLabs. I don't know if you follow them. I prefer them to Benjamin Cowen, but they were the two that I was watching for a while. Someone's asking me if I got a new mic. No. Let me ask why. I don't know. Does my mic sound different? Hold on. Let me find that channel. Try and remember the name of it. JLabs Digital. So let me just show you on Telegram. So these guys were the ones I used to prefer to watch from but the two of them, so this and Benjamin Cowen, so yeah, JLabs Digital on here, do good videos that sort of talk about like over a lot of the different data that I don't look at, like metrics and things like that. And I think these guys have what's the word? Yeah, bear chain. I think is it called bear chain? They have their own, what do you call it? Like their own trading, their own charting platform with indicators and things like that. But again, for me, like I just don't have the time to kind of go and learn all these different things that they have, you know, daily active addresses. I can see actually they don't appear to. Maybe they've stopped doing streams recently. But yeah, because they used to do streams, I think, at least twice a week. I'll have to investigate that. But yeah, these guys are good if they are still doing streams. Nothing about them in there. Yeah, this Panda trading terminal. So I did join that mainly because they made a comment that it might be paid in the future if you didn't join now. So I just joined, but I haven't really used it. But it's the same as Benjamin Cowen. Like the data's good, but it's not necessarily very imminently tradable. But it's good. It can be good from a high time frame perspective, and like, you know, at least help you get confluence with what the macro is doing. But having said that, to be honest, to be fair, a lot of it I don't understand. Not that I don't think I have the capacity to understand it. I do, but I just need to, like, the calculations. I suffer from a lack of trust, so I need to like know all the because I've got a mathematics background. I need to know all the equations and because I don't trust anybody else. But I don't necessarily have the knowledge anymore. Like back in the day, I did to critique. But at least if I see the equation, I can probably have a very good idea of what it's trying to do. But I also, I worked in data for long enough to know that most people get things wrong. Ben is good with market direction and the synergy between markets and economy. Yes. But then I heard, I don't know, so I thought that as well. But then I think somebody else in my group then became highly critical of him, somebody who'd really supported him for a while and said he actually really wasn't very good anymore. But also, is he good because he's up-only good? Because the thing is, what a lot of these people that do the high time frames, they're always calling up only. So thus, they will catch every significant move. But I don't know, like, does Ben really say when he's selling? Whether was he able to call a top based on his data or based on his own TA? I don't know. But yeah, maybe I'll start watching him again and see what he's saying. But yeah, I certainly found his data and his information interesting. I just didn't necessarily find it directly tradable. But like you say, yeah, good from the high general market direction. But a general market direction being mostly up only. So let me just see. I haven't got a reply on my why, whether my microphone's any different. Anyway, so AIC. So yeah, a lot of these are touching monthly demands. Obviously, something like this is still bullish. Like we are seeing a lot of monthly demands breaking. This is obviously broken trend, but for something like this, which is still, because I know people much prefer to buy than to sell. But something like this, which at least is holding a bullish structure compared to a significant amount of the market, then it's worth watching to see if you can get some decent long entries. And also where the ones where all these supplies have already been tested and they're leaving a lot of this as a kind of a bit of a quicker down move, at least for the last section of it. But a lot of them have this very slow grind down, a bit like that. So when they do bounce, you get these very big green up moves. So this is worth an eye. KEYCAT. So this I know had a hit yesterday again. Did have a decent bounce. So I think it went up about 10% immediately after the alert, but obviously hasn't moved very much further. It was an aggressive entry on that, and it's a little bit of a challenge as well in there. I've lost my monthly box. Try and get that monthly box back in the right place. Yeah, so it's had a monthly supply in there, and it's rejected off monthly supply, and it's got a 2-month demand. So I think the high time frame, I didn't really love this, but the alert had already gone. And like I've said before, it depends when the alerts hit. So it's very possible I set this alert back here, hoping it would get an immediate retest. But now it's had some consolidation distribution. This could just run straight through it. And I think I wouldn't really look for the higher low there based on the now rejection of monthly supply. Yeah, so that's not something I think particularly worth looking at now. CTSI, just collapsed off a cliff, like so many of the other ones with history, but again, is approaching. So I had an alert there for the first 2 weeks / 3-month demand. I reset the alert, there's a 3-month and then there's a monthly just below. I've reset the alert on the basis that it was probably going to dip deeper inside. This, yeah, did hit yesterday. So obviously it has come down deeper inside, but yeah, this is something that's worth an eye. It is back at the start of this massive up move. But yeah, you need to watch the lower time frames, and this is not something for today even, this is, you're going to watch days, potentially days of build up. There'll be the odd thing which just bounces and takes off, but you don't need to FOMO in at the low here. You're looking for structure like this, makes a daily demand, get in there once it's hit a decent zone. So that's CTSI, VTHO. Another one that's also hit a monthly demand, and so I kind of like this one on the basis. So I had this alert that went previously, but it didn't test the level. So again, decent monthly demand. VTHO is VeChain though, so if you want to trade this, I would just suggest looking at what VeChain's doing as well, because I think this is the gas of VeChain, I believe, and I think they tend to follow each other. So you want to check with VeChain is at support now as well. I haven't had an alert go on that, and I have done the alerts recently, so I'm not sure where that's at. But again, it has come down into monthly demand with a weekly inside it. Worth an eye, and this is something that if it does run, obviously can run through all those stops. I need to just double check in here, like I said, I haven't updated all of these. So this now has a weekly supply that it's rejected off. And again, I haven't updated. I've updated recently enough actually because it's V. So the monthly should be accurate at least. So it probably didn't create a monthly supply. No, it did. I take that back. It was an indirect one though. But again, same challenge here, coming off 3-month supply. Is it just going to break down now, having swing failed here? Is it just going to swing fail here and come back down into the zone back down here? Possible, but keep an eye on it because it's a monthly demand. IOST, I'm pretty sure, was also a monthly demand. I know weekly, so again, this is it, will it, won't it hold? Something you can watch. So any of these, like I say, are things you can watch. All of them you should be looking at a minimum, I would say 8-hour, 12-hour, and possibly daily demands. And also, like I said, the chart, rechart all the structures so you know where your any new 1 week, 2 week, 3 week supplies are. So if they're pretty close like this, you might want to be a bit more careful. Ideally, you want a bigger drop because then supply is further away and it's got more of a chance to do an up move. But we're obviously hoping at some point that we get a move like this, where it still has weekly supply and it just runs straight through it. And maybe we're getting closer to that point. But I don't know. I just don't think others is really at a place that I want it to be yet. I suppose it's in the monthly demand. SERAPH was one of the ones that had a decent bounce off yesterday. So this had this really nasty wick all the way down on MEXC, but I think it didn't appear on the other charts, so I thought it was worth still looking at that 2-week demand. It has also got a monthly demand. So I think I had the alert. I think it was before the monthly got created, actually. I think it was just for a higher low off a 12-hour or something like that. It now has monthly demands, hit the 2-week inside it. So again, this is something I would think it's worth keeping an eye on, see if you get some build up from here. because again, it's a newer coin. It's got scope to certainly test some of these at least upper levels, if not just break out. It's had a very long, so 12th of January, so it's now had a 3-4 month consolidation in here. And they're tough, you know, some of these will just fall off a cliff from there. I don't know what this might have had history from previously, which is why I've got a big daily zone in there. MEXC do that, they have some history, they cut trading for a while, then they restart trading, but the history remains there, so sometimes I get that on my charts, either that or I picked it from another exchange. But yeah, this is certainly worth an eye if you didn't get in that yesterday. See whether you get a retest and a high low. ORDI is another one that came back down, I think, into 3-month demand on this. I didn't reset the alerts, even though it's still a little bit higher. So I might reset the alert on that. That there, so if that comes down a little bit lower, you can keep an eye on that. Again, just be conscious, big zone, so it can still come down. There's a 3-day and a daily down there, so it could still come down deeper and fill some of this green candle. It doesn't have to bounce off the top, but they're hit and miss. Some will, some won't, and it all depends, I think, what price is going on over here, and are people looking at the 3-month levels. But wait and see what reaction you get. RSS3, this was obviously a very high risk. It got the rejection here off a weekly supply, and it's also now appears to have a 3-month in there, 3-month sort of indirect. But yeah, it's hit and hope trade. It's had this massive drop. It hasn't had any, to be fair, it hasn't had any retracement on this at all. So it is possible it gets some retracement. Whether it's going to happen now or whether it wants to come down lower in here is uncertain. But yeah, bear in mind, obviously, you're trading against a consistent and strong downtrend if you want to trade this. Yeah, so obviously I had an alert here for this. Got a bit of consolidation, but then dropped down. But it's obviously a consistent downtrend for the last, month or so, or a few weeks. But obviously it can, if it wants to, just throw a massive green candle straight up through all of that. So it's a nice one to keep an eye on, but yeah, just bear in mind you are guessing that this is the bottom because there is no bottom to be seen. INJ was one I also said yesterday that should be watched for sure. So this, we had an alert on this annual zone, which obviously just got up to 3-day supply, and it's going to now reset the alert for a retest of the annual, and then there's this 3-month just inside. So it now has come down and hit the 3-month. Show you that. So yeah, this is certainly something that you should keep an eye on to see if it can pick up. Like, it didn't have much strength off the original bounce. People are scared. Things like this has had a significant drop now since December. It's been just coming down and it's having small bounces. But again, it's tested on all of these levels already. So when it does want to go, this can potentially move fast. But yeah, lower time frame, obviously it's had the same as the majors. It's got the bounced up onto daily supply today, and it's just come back down to hit this level. But that's definitely something you should have on your radar. ARPA, I think, was similar. Again, the alert went a bit early and I did reset it, so that's a yearly zone. Not an ideal yearly because it's from the first candle and it has already been tested, but it's got 2- and 3-week demand here. It's taken out potentially a bunch of stops here. Hopefully it won't fall all the way down there, but again, something you can keep an eye on. It's got a 3-month supply on this, so. But again, it's just like with, this is at the moment still one of the few that's in an uptrend, same as INJ. So while it's had, a couple of years of consolidation, if it does hold here, could have a decent move. Very early days. Yeah, this is one of the ones that I just explained with MEXC, where it's got the big gap, where it hasn't had trading. So this was, when was this? June 23 to January 24, so there's a 6-month gap in here of what happened with price. I don't know. I set the alert because obviously that weekly zone is potentially still a thing. But yeah, again, it's not necessarily the highest probability. Maybe a lot of people who are trading this, if they're trading it not on MEXC, they're not going to know this zone exists. But yeah, that's another alert that went. PYRs are all-time low, so this was an alert for breakdown retest. So something like this, you're looking for, as I've said previously, you're either looking for it to reclaim this level, so where's the nearest supply? So there's a weekly supply. So what I'm looking for on the weekly is for a weekly close below this level, and then I'll short the retest. If you get a weekly swing failure, then it's an entry you can potentially take for a long. I know a certain influencer was obsessed with this coin a while ago. I'm not sure if it was back in 22 or through here, insisting it was going to go up. I can't remember, but obviously not. I don't know if this has any history either. But yeah, so you're looking for either the breakdown retest for the short on this. You can also look lower time frame if it's made daily supply, 2-day supply in here. If it makes something at the level, if it comes back up just to test this level. Let's see if there's the 8 hours there. So it's got an 8 hour just at the level, so you can watch this for a tight short entry if you want. If it just tests this level, the 8 hour supply above, with a stop just above the 8 hour. To see if you get a bigger breakdown. But yeah, these entries are, is it going to swing fail or a break retest for a short? And it's still too early to tell on that. SD, this is another one. Yeah, this is one of the more horrible ones. So again, we had the 6-month demand, but a weak one. Has now obviously come right back to the bottom and may, depending on what it does in the next 3 months, flip it to supply. So I'm just meant to put the line of the bottom of the 6-month in there so we can see. So at the 6 months, obviously that it goes all the way down to the wick, so it can still resurrect itself but obviously it's come very, very deep into the 6 months. It had an indirect monthly here and then this 3-week. I don't mind this actually. There's, again, if the market's ready to move, it's in a range, it's at the bottom of, it's in a demand at the bottom of the range. It could still come deeper in the demand, so I have again reset the alert for the 3-day if it wants to come deeper in the demand. But the 6 month can still play out even if it comes right to the bottom of it, and I've seen that happen. It's impressive how I can keep up with all the alerts and all the coins. Yeah, I know. Well, like I say, I'm just it's taxing, but I'm used to it, I guess. And there are some that I focus on more than others, but I generally have a quick run through of them before I come on stream so I can see what they're doing. And then there are some, like obviously like layer and form, that I look at, I use as educational for myself and for other people, where I look for multiple different entries. And there are others like that where I'm just giving a brief. So SD is just a brief synopsis. If somebody wants to trade this, then they can look, what this is doing, if it makes a daily demand, but I'm not necessarily going to come back to that. It might, have gone up 50% by the time I look at it again, when it hits whatever the next the supply alert is that I've got on it. So layer, this is still holding the 3-day demand. So this was these are still risk entries because this was a swing fail entry, initial entry, then a retest. I had a couple of retest entries. Let me go down to the lower time frame on this. So yeah, I talked about this previously. There was, I think, a 12-hour supply in there, or a 4-hour, maybe a 2-hour. Yeah, so a 2-hour supply here, and I did say it could go higher into this 30-minute at the top, so it did obviously come all the way up to the 30-minute, and then has given a nice rejection off there. It then made a daily supply, so I thought it was worth another alert. The alert did go a bit earlier, and I said there were a couple of 2-hour supplies at the level, but also this untested 4-hour above, so it's obviously come up into that. This is obviously still a bullish chart, so I'm being aggressive on the shorts, but this doesn't necessarily mean, at some point this is either going to need to break down or break out quite soon. It is still holding a 3-day demand, but had made a daily supply, so I was still persistent on shorts based on that daily supply. But for now, this is going to have to start dropping in the next 24 hours, or I think the consolidation is going to be too long and it's going to go up. But again, like I spoke yesterday about the similarities between this and L3, go back to L3 quickly. L3 over here, but you can see how long, even whether or not we're at this point in time on layer, or we're going to do something like this, it took ages to actually make the breakdown. So, it's possible layer's going to hold that zone and still take a while to do it, but obviously the longer it holds, the higher the risk is that it's going to just break out. particularly if it's like this, it's the one of very few green things on the chart, because then people leap on anything that's green and start trying to long them. But you know, it is looking a bit distribution-like, but it's still early days and we are still getting all these higher lows. But this might be the first significant lower high. I mean, it was close, it had a lower high here, but a decent lower high, and then we need to get the lower low to see a downtrend coming. BERA. Okay, this was a risky entry. You know, it's a new coin, it doesn't have much history on it. I probably need to just look and see. This hasn't made any weekly, so it's still just sort of in a sideways range. There was a 3-day demand there. Still holding the 3-day demand, has obviously come significantly deeper inside now, and it's come through the daily, and it's now made a daily supply above. I might have to have another little look at this later, because again, like I said, I'm trying to keep this stream relatively short. But yeah, that's not the long that I would particularly think about taking right now. Maybe if it comes and tests this 4 hour, and you can see that this wick didn't quite test that 4 hour, maybe if it comes back to there. But yeah, I would like to see those highs taken out before it drops, to be honest. So I would like this alert to go. So I still think this is a potential for longs, but it's obviously not looking like it at the moment. You need to wait for some confirmation, or wait for some consolidation like this before looking for longs, and or potentially if it comes back down into that 4 hour, like obviously I'm not liking the reaction it's getting off that 3-day, and it's got a daily immediately above. Excuse me. Wing, this is another breaking all-time low one, so exactly the same as PYR that I talked about earlier. We're looking for break and retest, so you know, if you start to see this come back above the orange line, let me see if it's actually a decent level or not. What is this level? So it is actually, at least it's a decent low. But again, it's like this has a significant space to supply, which is good from the perspective if it does give a long, that at least it's got room to go up. So there's an unconfirmed 2-week zone there, and weekly, yeah, and the weekly is not confirmed, a little bit lower. So see if there's a 5-day. The only thing with, yeah, so the thing was it did come off 2-month supply up here. I think I had the alert 3-month supply a little bit higher, but it came off the 2-month level there, so obviously that's why it's had the significant drop. But at least it does have a significant space to the next confirmed supply on the higher time frame, the 4-day up there, 3-day, 2-day, daily. Let's just see if it's got anything. But just checks on something like this that it's not being delisted. I've actually got a feeling Wing it might be delisted. Still on gate for now. I've got a feeling I can't remember if it was Wing or Win. I've got a feeling this might be coming delisted soon. So if that's the case, obviously don't do anything with this. But yeah, check that. LTO is a very sad one as well. So this is coming back down into 6-month demand, but it's really it was a 6-month that was already tested, and not a great 6-month, because again it's the first candle. And then I had an alert go for the monthly, and it's obviously taken a wick really deep down inside this zone. I might delete that box off it. I mean, this is a fascinating one really, because this is one up here. So it's had this monthly, had a monthly demand, which is now a 3-monthly supply. So what's happened on a lot of these, the monthly demands that we had before that have broken down have now turned into 3-month supply. But I remember talking about this when I did the L's back in the day. Just putting that as a 2-month, that's a confirmed 2-month level as well. That everybody kept longing this, and they were longing it really early. But obviously my method didn't help either. I felt that they were, yeah, I think everybody was longing here. And I was saying I really didn't want to long there, A, because we were too close to monthly supply, but also because we hadn't hit monthly demand. So that was where I had my entry. So obviously we did get a bounce off that, but only for, what, 5 days or so before then it just broke monthly demand. But there were a lot of people like longing here, because I kept seeing a lot of the influencers on this. But yeah, obviously even my entry didn't work on that. But yeah, I hope they didn't hold from there. But you know, it really is quite sad state of affairs on LTO, because this was something that really a lot of people liked. again, I don't know if that's a very big drop on this compared to a lot of the others, so I'm not sure. Maybe there were lots of stops in there, but again, maybe this is a delisting, so be a little bit careful on this one. But anyway, this should hopefully give plenty of time if it's going to bounce here. But yeah, I'm not overly confident on that one, and again, I have to look at what, it's got the new, it's got distance till supply. I guess it could fall, have a blow off bottom, but just have a look through here, because I'm not going to do it now, on what weekly supply and things are in there that you're going to need to contend with on the rise back up. ORCA was a short entry, and a more aggressive short, so again, as I've said, the shorts are much more reliable, so 12-hour supply here. I thought, we could still go up here. I'm going to actually put that alert up there now, just in case this does want to go back up to this area, because it tested an 8-hour here, but didn't on that entry, so that was really nice. But yeah, so far with decent reaction off that. It does have a weekly demand there, offset below. It's got a 5-day inside it. Oh, I do already have an alert, so I have put an alert here for daily demand. So we can see what happens if it comes to test that. It does still have this monthly that it's working in. But I don't like the fact, these single candles, like I've said before, are just retracing for the most part in their entirety. So like we looked at RSS3 earlier, I think was the one, it had a similar situation and has just come all the way back to ground zero. Let me just double check I'm not, yeah, so similar here, straight up into supply. ORCA's a little bit different because it's a bit more of a bullish chart overall than RSS3. But yeah, still biased to short on that. PLUME has been kind of slow actually off shorts from here, but hasn't come back down into demand yet. My concern on this was that it was going to pull a ripple. So just to update for anybody who hasn't watched previously, that the ripple move being triangle consolidation die. So I say risk, but not a risk. That's why I was shorting, but a risk for these long entries in here. And even this down here, so I still think this could run through. I think I put it in the alert, could be the triangle distribution pattern. But this has come up. I think I had the alert for a 12-hour, 8-hour supply in there, but it's actually also now got a 3-day. So you can look for re-entries on that. It's possible it pushes higher in the zone. Obviously, it's got a lot of consolidation here. Didn't quite tap that 12-hour, so look for push higher in here. Obviously, it's got so many of these. This actually did test the 2-hour up there. So, but watch for untested zones above, because this could want to push higher inside that 3-day now if it chooses to. Fairly nasty, but yeah, obviously it's kind of a bit of a slow mover. But look and see if it makes either new local supply following that hit, or if it pushes higher and gives maybe trend line stops that it can take later. BIGTIME. So BIGTIME, I had a short entry again that went yesterday that was pretty nice. So we had a short here, but it made the higher low. So this is one of the reasons I was looking for the possibility of these higher lows. This one obviously has broken all-time low, or actually from when price started, and still has a weekly supply, so this is still a weekly downtrend. Yeah, and still this is is actually holding 8-hour demand. So you can keep an eye on this actually for longs. If it does take, so I think this might have created a 4-day demand actually. No. 3 days, did it create a 5-day? I think I was looking yesterday to see if it was going to create a 4-day demand, but then it didn't. Excuse me, yeah, because that candle it closed back below, so I need to make that dashed again. So actually I might look for a long if this comes back down into here. Just purely because it has made a higher low, like it's come up into weekly supply, so it's still a high risk long. But I think worth watching because it is holding for now, and at least maybe it'll even get a bounce. Yeah, it's sort of mistesting that little zone in there, so we'll see what follow-up this gives, because again it's had a decent pump off the bottom, a decent second follow-up pump, which is always nice. It's rejected pretty hard off supply, but again if Bitcoin's going to hold from here, then this could give it a little bit of a run. again, because it's taken out all-time low and then held a retest. So it's taken out that low, held a retest on 3-day demand there. Am I going mad? Did I have an entry on that 3-day? Did I have a cross on this 3-day demand that I've just deleted by mistake? I can't remember now, I'll check that later. I'm not sure if I just lost my mind there. I was talking about having had an entry there, but maybe I didn't have the entry, or maybe I just was looking at the zone thinking it would have been a nice entry. Anyway, I'll double check that later just to see if I've completely lost my mind. Aussie man, if you're still there, let me know if I'm losing my mind and if there was actually a cross at the bottom there that I've just deleted while looking at this. Or whether I was just looking at those short entries. Yeah, so there's a 2-day, quite a lot of these have these 2-day supplies above the weekly. And the weeklies are so choppy. I've alerted a couple of them, but mainly where they coincided with the 3-month or the 2-month level. So in this case, it hasn't. However, obviously, it is an area that I looked for longs previously, so therefore might make a decent short entry if it goes a bit higher. Okay, it's a 2-week supply. There was a 2-week demand there, that's what I was looking for longs on before that got broken down. So yeah, be conscious of that zone if it does come a bit higher, but this, this at least is one of the few things that has made a higher low and held it for a decent bounce. So you can keep an eye on this if it gets to do a bit more consolidation, and or if you want to be aggressive, possibility if it creates a new 8-hour demand. It's got 5 hours to go, so that's a while away, but if it does create a new 8-hour demand in there, you might get a more aggressive entry off this. KMNO, so I had an alert that went yesterday that I talked about on this, so it was I think a 3-day demand in here, so it got a little bounce, but then just rejected immediately off supply. Losing my mind's part of being traded, yeah. Sad but true. I also got very little sleep last night. Not sure, I think it was just it was raining all night. Didn't go to bed, I actually went to bed later than normal, but I was still awake at 6, I think. So yeah, anyway, this 6-month demand, 3-week demand inside it, have a bounce off the 3-week, but not got very far. It's not, again, the highest probability long, but it is clean 3-day demand. So at least the benefit of a trade like this is at least you've got a defined stop on it. Risk on it is that you've got these 2 equal lows down there that it could go for. But given it's got the 6-month and the 3-week, worth watching for longs. Missing MNT. So MNT, I remember again, I charted this on when I was doing the M's and I was liking this bull flag, but again, I just couldn't find an entry for it. So I think I was waiting for this, but then obviously by then the market had just decided to die more. This, yeah, didn't quite hit the 3-week and monthly level down here. But I think because I kind of like this as an overall picture of this chart, it held the 6-month demand down here, had a decent bounce, it did make a lower high. But I was wondering if this was going to give like a bigger picture triangle, and then obviously what at the time was looking kind of bull flag like on this. I'll reset this alert for this 3-week again, 3-week and 1 month, given it missed it on the previous tap. But I think again, it was one of the more aggressive entries. It may or may not hold this 1-day and 4-day zone. I don't love it, I have to say. Don't love the structure of that. But yeah, it's a daily demand, so you can watch if it holds here. But overall, yeah, on the macro, I like this chart. NKN came down into yearly demand, so this is another, but there's another one that had a really significant drop today that, again, unsure why, and it's trying to bounce kind of nicely, but yeah, so ones with the significant drops, as I've said, double check that they haven't been delisted or something like that, because again, this obviously had no support, so that's why it's kind of particularly fallen off a cliff. On the flip side, it's in an annual zone, so that should be on your radar, along with what was the other one, INJ, that's in an annual zone. Again, it's not a perfect annual zone because it's from the first candle. Certainly, keep an eye on this, but if it does come back to test that low and hit that monthly again, and or if it gives you anything lower time frame, I will reset an alert there in case it comes back for the swing fail of that 1 month to 1 month, 6 month. Demand reset. So yeah, if it comes back for a second test of that, you know, maybe it will come up into weekly supply and come back down again. But you know, just again watch the low time frame price action on that, because that could be quite nice. Got a 2-month supply above and a 3-month, so I do have alerts set for possible shorts. But as I've said previously, you know, this is something that's primed to potentially go through the trend line. You know, it's got a bit of a gap in here, so it could pause after at least the first half of it, maybe give a re-entry and then go for the rest of it, or it could just run all the way through. But yeah, NKN should be on the radar at higher time frame. CIS, yeah, I didn't look at the CoinEx chart, so on the Binance chart, it looks like I've just made up a zone. But yeah, on the CoinEx chart, apparently we have 6-month demand and all-time low. So I'm not going to check these now. Actually, I'm going to assume that's accurate because I've drawn it for a reason. But it is 6-month demand, so again, on the radar. MLN. So this was an interesting one. This has just been listed on futures. So I charted this for the first time. I was bearish, and so the comment on this alert was that I am bearish. You know, it made an annual supply. It's come off it. It's made a 3-monthly supply. It rejected just below. It's got a possible 6-month in there if it stays below. It's obviously now back below the monthly level, but we're still very early in the month. But I just didn't know why it had suddenly been listed on futures, so I did put a long on that basis. So while the overall chart makes me bearish, I'm like, why has this that's been around? Because I remember I think one of my group was loving this back in 2020-21, obviously because it was going up a lot. It's been going down ever since, but I don't know why it's suddenly come back on the radar such that it's suddenly been listed on futures only now. And I'm pretty sure all of them are new. So anyway, hence I set this alert. There's a 5-day and then there's a weekly in there. So again, just keep watch on that. Be conscious that it is overarchingly bearish on the macro. Yeah, and maybe you can do some research on the fundamentals if you want and find out if this is worth watching. And is it going to suddenly pick up, or is this could just be a listing pump? It very probably is just a listing pump, but whether it's going to continue, like I say, whether it's listed for a reason, not sure. So only a few left now. Mint, again, another prime example of short the aggressive retests. So this came up into weekly supply. I don't even know if that would have given an entry. It might have been too fast. Well, it's an hourly candle, did close up there on the hourly, so yeah, this certainly would have given, if you're watching, an entry. I don't know if it gave a supply entry specifically, but again, when you have these strong up moves, particularly ones that happen in like one candle, an hourly candle, then almost certainly they're going to retrace, and particularly in this kind of market, and particularly if it's into a weekly supply. This does have a lot of stops. I think when I set it, I was a bit wary of all the stops above there, and it's come up quite high, but it hasn't taken out all these stops. So, maybe this was going to hold this 4-hour demand now. So, yeah, I wouldn't look for shorts on this again unless you see it break the 4-hour demand, because there is a chance now this is going to go back up and take out all those stops. Let me see, it hasn't made an hourly supply. If you want to look for scalp longs on this, it's in a spot for that too. But being aware it's coming off a weekly supply there, that might give you a scalp long. QTUM, I reset this alert as well. This has, okay, I've got a yearly level in there, but it's drawn monthly for some reason. Let me take this off. So yeah, this does have a yearly demand, but it has already come back down into it and tested it. It's now made a 3-month supply. The only thing with this, again, I reset the alert because I think I didn't even have anything written on it. It was just an alert. This first wick tapped into that monthly, but then it's left these 2 wicks. So it's now got these 3 wicks. So it's possible it makes a higher low there, because obviously each of these has been a higher low. But it's also possible it comes back and takes out that lows into the monthly. Excuse me. So again, I've reset that alert and we'll see. Obviously, overarchingly, it's a pretty ugly chart, and so many of these charts are breaking down, so don't trade this blindly. But again, if the alert goes, or if you set your own alert, just watch for the swing failure of those. Use that as your invalidation, like this bottom wick, Like once it closes some time frame back above, then your invalidation is wherever the wick low is. Failing that, then just wait it out, because like everything else, it's going to take some time to consolidate if it's not just going to instantly swing fail. So as we know, on AAVE I was bullish because this made annual demand, but it's a hideous one and it only made it by a very small amount. Then I've talked about this before, you know, it kind of came and it tested this 3-week level, and then it tested the monthly, and I think it just missed them. So it just missed the 3-week on the first alert. Then I put a second alert and it did hit the 3-week but missed the monthly. But then I had an alert down for this monthly demand, which I've now reset again. So it did hit a monthly alert today. Actually, sorry, excuse me, it's not, this is a monthly from this supply, so it's hit a monthly level but not a monthly demand, but it's inside the bigger monthly demand. And then I'd reset the alert for the 5-day inside it. So this is something, again, like I do think you should watch this, but again, it's not so far giving any sign of like anything decent. It could still come down. I've got an alert now for the 6 months also down inside, so if it could come, you know, down a lot deeper. Let me just see what the fib's doing on this. So the 61, yeah, is in this 5-day, so at least we've got that, and it's the 78 in the linear. And also on this you can check the BTC pair, which I haven't done, but check if the BTC pair's at support, then that's going to be a much more reliable trade. Let's get my camera, I look very blue. I don't know why I look blue today. Blue light. Anyway, so yeah, ARV should be on the radar still, but again, showing you what you have to wait for on the high time frame. You know, this is it's still got weekly supply, it's just rejected off. You know, we need to see some supply break. You know, look at previous consolidations at lows when we've had moves down like this, for example. You know, it gives you, you know, maybe you don't get that initial entry and you have to get the retest entry if it's just going to pump straight through it. So certainly keep an eye on them on the lower time frames, but you know, while they're still retesting and on a downtrend, then you're still guessing if you just say blindly long this now. APU, yeah, I don't think I like this anymore. So I did have an alert set for 12-hour and daily demand here. Wouldn't say that's a high probability trade. Again, possibly it'll swing fail the low, but again, so it came off weekly supply and it's now got a new 5-day above. So with that new 5-day, I don't think this is a trade worth taking. FARTCOIN, it's had a nice bounce off that level already. So yeah, the problem I had with this, so I did set the alert. I know actually hasn't quite tapped the level, so again, another slightly front run. It's got this huge weekly demand. 61 fibs a little bit lower, still coming off 5-day supply, but is still in the overarching 2-week. Like, because we had this new weekly coinciding with this old 2-weekly, I thought it was worth a long or an alert there. But let me just show you the lower time frame. So you can see it made a daily demand, it's tested it. It just missed this daily. I think I had the alert back here for a 2-day, but it's very messy on the low time frames, and a lot of things already tested. So what you really want, you know, to find a high probability level is when it's like moved up really hard from the level, it hasn't come back to test it. So there is a daily there, like I say, that hasn't quite been tested. So I might just reset that. But yeah, I set the alert for the weekly just to see. So, you know, keep an eye on that weekly, or just to see if it gets the low time frames to kick in now. Keep an eye on this daily that hasn't quite been tested inside there. But again, be conscious. This is a messy up move. So it could, which means it can just cut straight back through it if it wants. But I think people are still quite excited by FARTCOIN. So, you know, it did get a decent, what's that, like a doubling in price there? 220%, more than doubling in price. So people still seem to want to be trading this, and there's still certainly going to be a lot of people trapped higher. So it could push back into this weekly supply. Similarly to the upside, again, just a reminder, I've got an alert here on the 61 fib and 3-day supply. There is a weekly lower, and obviously we're coming off a 5-day now, but this is similarly choppy. So if it wants to run, it could run through all that. And then finally, since I've been on stream, I've had 2 new alerts. Let me just go into the log. Got current symbol selected. So we've had fun. Oh, DGB. Wow, that's big on fun. So DGB 8-hour supply there. And this was a bit of a risk here. It has run through this 8-hour, or run all, not quite through it yet, but also to the top. There was a slightly untested 8-hour above. So yeah, this could go a little touch higher on that, but yeah, certainly I think it's worth looking for shorts. We did get a long off the low here. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I probably need to think that through a bit more. This is on a 6-month demand. So I don't know, like maybe this is gonna run. I need to think that through a bit. But yeah, you can watch this for shorts if you want, because obviously it is back up in supply, but like I say, it may not be the best shorts. Just add that to the watch list. And then we've got fun, which I think is similar. So, oh yeah, I would have liked this to hit significantly sooner, but okay, so back up in 8-hour supply. This was overarching in 6-month supply. It's left some wicks here, so I wasn't overly confident about shorting. I would have preferred, like I say, that to hit quite a lot sooner. But fun can do some crazy moves like this, so it's obviously held 12-hour demand here, which I've had an alert for a long on that at the lows there. Back up in at this 8-hour supply. So yeah, keep watch on it, but just be conscious on this. It's oh yeah, so the other thing on fun is it did come off annual demand. Like I had an alert for the start of annual and it did nothing. Obviously came back a lot deeper inside, and then obviously just to be, excuse me, in my water, just to wanting to be a bit painful. It got my alert at the low, but then slightly front rounded to the 2-week at the bottom of this annual demand. But yeah, it's kind of a bit messy. I might just hide that 2-month. Very high in 6-month supply, but coming off annual demand. So yeah, just be a bit careful. I mean, this is obviously, you can see back of previous price action. This is very wicky. Yeah, be a little bit careful on that, because it's got those stops that it could go for up here. I'll have a look at that when I go off stream and just see whether I want to set an alert for possible swing fail up here if this 8-hour doesn't work out. Excuse me, probably about time I finish since I'm starting to cough again. GFM, okay, another one. Obviously I tried the aggressive higher low here, which has failed dismally, or well, gave it a little scalp back up into the local supply, but didn't get any further than that, and then has come back down to the start of the impulse. And these, really were fairly obvious on so many of these that I've talked about. These trend line stops generally do get targeted, particularly if you're in the direction of trend. It did create a weekly demand, actually. I think that's why I was aggressive on this as well, because it had a weekly demand, but obviously it's just come off supply, so come straight back through it. Might flip that back to weekly supply. So if this gets closed down here at the end of the week and you're wanting to long this, then that's probably not wise. Up to you if you want to take that. Obviously it's got very little price history on this, so I have no idea if this is going to hold or not. Is this a real low? I don't know, and I would have said previously you need to check, see if any of the other charts have history. Anyway, yeah, so that's it. That's all the alerts for today, which is quite a few. Hopefully we'll get some more quiet days, and then I can actually start doing follow-up alerts on these, and at least go over the ones that I've talked about yesterday. So I had a very aggressive, I had an aggressive short alert on 8-hour supply on this. It's obviously a big zone here, so it's got a little rejection, but now it's coming back higher in it. But yeah, I don't want to go through all these now. I just thought I'd look at that because it was quite green. ACT obviously had the huge dump, and now has had a 10% bounce in this monthly demand. But yeah, I said to just be a bit careful of that because we don't really know why it's bounced. Carver I liked for longs as well, so it's nice to see that's a bit green. So I did say, so this is what you're looking for, on Carver. So this is not perfect because it's got monthly supply and 2-weekly supply, but again, like I've said, we've got those trend line stops above, but you're looking for that bounce. This came back and gave a retest at the same level, which is nice. Then it's made an 8-hour demand, so at least that, what you're looking for is those. In a perfect world, this demand would have already broken supply, but at least in this case, it's got a bit of a space to this daily supply. So it gives you a defined entry, defined stop loss, and then at least you can potentially get in, move your stop to break even. But this is what I like. What I want to do with the alts now is be able to not have so many of them, such that I can actually look, you know, how I was explaining on layer earlier, so I can actually look for the solid re-entries form. You know, same as something I've been trading this more actively, and I looked at yesterday. I wanted this to create a 2-day supply, which it did, and it's rejected straight off that. So that's kind of what I want to be looking for. You know, you're looking for the high risk. I'm kind of guessing at this point that they're hoping this is a swing failure. It hasn't broken any demand. This was a rogue wick, so ignore that. But then, you know, finally now it's created a daily supply. Well, it created a daily there. It got a retest quite high inside. It's created a 2-day supply. So it starts to become more confident for the shorts. And then you can start building up positions. So yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Let's have a quick look at where Bitcoin is before I go. Okay, so still trying to balance here. It's got that daily 8-hour supply on both of those now. So yeah, not something I want to look for longs on. If it flips this 8-hour supply, then great. We can potentially look for longs later. Or if it makes some new significant demand. Let me see, I think it's still got... So Bitcoin itself is still an hourly supply. Ether has made an hourly demand, but yeah, it's not exactly strong at this stage and is just going to go straight into that 8-hour supply there. So yeah, I'll have a look at this a bit more tomorrow. Anyway, I hope this is helpful. I'm checking if I have any other comments. Nope, all good. I will try and, I didn't actually update the timestamps for yesterday, so I will try and do that for both of these. I probably won't do the full timestamps, but at least I'll write a list of the alts I've gone through that I can put in the Telegram channel. Yeah, and then also try and keep them as an hour-and-a-half streams, but try and keep them a bit shorter than my previous streams. So yeah, any other questions, give me a shout. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the stream, and please share with all your friends so I can get more people watching me and more people chatting to me. Have a good evening.